And what we found was I took her to Dr. Karen Becker, who is the most followed veterinarian in the world. If you're not following her, you need to, because she's amazing. And she did a series of tests and determined that she thought she had iron storage disease, and that was why she was having trouble perching. That's why her appetite changed. Things like this. We did 3 weeks of phlebotomy where they draw 1% of the blood volume just once a week, because when they do that, um, the body then kicks into making new red blood cells, which need iron, and they pull the iron from the liver. So that's one way to help rid the rid the liver of that excess iron. And we started seeing improvements right away. And then she started talking about a tea regimen. And I had not heard anything about offering tea to animals back in the 90s. And that really jump started my research into teas and how we can, use them in animal husbandry. When I started doing zoo work, it became even more obvious because zoos all over Europe for decades have been using different types of tea with different types of animals for a variety of reasons. One of the major ones, obviously, is iron storage disease, and that's because the tannins that are in the black tea, for example, bind to the iron and carry it out of the body instead of letting it seed in the liver.
So when you mentioned that they take out a percentage of blood,
Mhm.
um, so is that just knowing how much blood is in a bird's body naturally, and you figure out what that math is?
Yeah, there's a mathematical equation that allows vets to figure out what blood volume is appropriate to based on a bird's body mass. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And it's not so. What is the effect of it draws the iron out,
Mhm.
hopefully. How does how did Cricket handle that treatment? I mean, was it just like, okay, blood draw, fine, moving on, or how was that?
Well, I mean, I think most birds hold a grudge after they've been manhandled like that. But yeah, she was fine. She was definitely more perky and active. What's incredible about the treatment and then introducing the T regimen was most of these birds die within months of their first symptom. So when you see the symptom, it's often too late. But we kept her alive 3.5 years beyond that point, and that was just unheard of. And a lot of people thought I was lying about it. I'm like, no, I mean, like this was the treatment, and it worked. And there was no medication or anything like that introduced. We just did the T regimen on top of the phlebotomy, and that took care of it. And she lived to a ripe old age. So we had done this with other birds since. Since then, though, I've significantly changed the diets of my birds so that we're not offering things that are going to lead to this
Right.
unnecessarily.
So Lori asked a question. Having blood drawn that often, was there bruising? Did she have bruising?
No, they did a jugular puncture, and it was very quick, and it was just 3 times, once a week for 3 weeks. That was it, and she had no, yeah, there was nothing, no ill effects from it.
So, okay, so iron storage disease, it sounds, I mean, fairly self-explanatory, but can you take us through what is iron storage disease?
Yeah, so iron is inherently in lots of food, and when we consume it, typically we use the iron for a variety of ways, including our red blood cells that carry iron. And those of you that are anemic know what it means to be low iron, things along that nature. But with iron storage disease, these species that are prone to it, and then there's also people who get this because of a genetic mutation. So it's a genetic disease, a disorder that affects them in the same way where they can't process the iron like other people can. And basically, the iron can't be metabolized, so it gets stuck in the liver. That's a big filtering organ, and it can't get out. And so that can lead to a host of problems, including complications with other tissues like pancreatic tissue and heart tissue. And we have seen birds who are prone to iron storage disease, and they will say, "Oh, they're diabetic," but it's more because their pancreas is compromised because of this illness. So,
So it's kind
um,
of a progression that is likely
mhm,
to happen. Okay.
yes, yeah,
So, so they don't metabolize the iron. It progresses. Um, when do, so you said that Cricket was 12 when
hmm
noticed this. So,
yep.
and what were the symptoms that you saw?
So she had trouble flying or getting perching. She was largely grounded all of a sudden. Um, the vet found some swollen joints. Her appetite significantly changed, where one day she would be gorging on food, the next day she wouldn't eat at all. So it was very obvious that there was a change because she had been healthy up to then.
Right. So does it look like anything else? I mean, because so if someone's thinking that, this might be iron storage disease that I'm looking at. I mean, I was discussing with Dr. Paulette last week that, I think it was last week, that there are, that just ain't right. She said, she's like,
Yeah.
they have, just ain't right. And it's, your birds well enough to know that this just isn't, how it's supposed to be. This isn't what we're looking for. And so, are there other things that can kind of mimic this that you would want to, but you'd still want to take your bird in if you were experiencing those kind of things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it can be it's hard with birds because they can show the same symptoms for so many different things. So a lot of the time when the bird's not feeling well, it's puffed up, it's on the bottom of the cage, it's not eating. That could be a lot of different things, which is why I immediately, I think a lot of people will see that and say, like, oh, I think it's this or I think it's this. Until you take it to a vet, a good avian vet, you to really get a look at the bird and do some blood work, you're not going to know.
right.
Iron storage is a little complicated because you can't directly detect it through a blood test. You really need a liver biopsy, or Dr. Becker had a combination of tests she used that helped build evidence towards that. And then when the
Mhm.
treatment worked, we immediately saw the difference. So, yeah. Um, yeah.
So you had mentioned a liver biopsy. So
Yes.
invasive procedure.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So, best way to do it, best way to stave this off is being proactive.
Okay. So how does this happen? I mean, yes, your first are sorry this happened, but a lot of people aren't familiar with dietary needs, haven't educated themselves, and and through no fault of their own, they're told this is what works, this is what doesn't work. So, what causes this um, to happen?
So it's diet, and it's there's several ways that this can happen. Um, he Sorry, my volunteer is telling me that Sirius will not go back in his cage, so I'm just giving her some pointers. So all of this happens when I'm not around. So diets that are high in heme iron. So heme
Mhm.
iron you're going to see in a lot of ultra processed foods, um, enriched foods, and animal meat and eggs. Those types of things are going to have some heme iron, and even if they're not considered high, a lot of it has to do with its bioavailability. If it's more readily taken up by the body,
Mhm.
and absorbed into the liver, then even small amounts of those types of foods can lead to this disorder. Um, Insect protein, for example, which we know a lot of birds eat in the wild, regardless of whether they're parrot or softbill, um, is mostly non-heme iron. So we don't see this problem when birds are fed insect protein.
Mhm.
But when it comes to every time someone says something about, oh, well, my bird likes chicken bones and my bird likes chicken and my bird likes fish and my bird likes eggs, just because they like it doesn't mean it's good for it. And these are prime foods that would lead to something like this. And I see the question right now: can iron storage disease be in any parrot? Anybody with a liver can have iron storage disease. So yes. And if I just read a paper recently on an African gray that was getting eggs regularly and some meat and fish, and had iron storage disease, and by diet, by eliminating those things from the diet and some treatment, then it didn't come back. So we think our birds need these things. They don't need these things. So the other thing that speeds it up is diets that are high in vitamin C. We think vitamin C is really good, so a lot
Mhm.
must be better, right? So unfortunately, vitamin C speeds the process up and speeds up the iron intake in the liver. So one of my frustrations is a lot of the information about feeding toucans, for example, out there is you got to feed them lots of papaya, and there is no evidence that they should have diets that are mostly papaya. Papaya is one of the highest uh, fruits in vitamin C,
Mhm.
and that will just exacerbate this and cause this that much more. It doesn't mean they can't have papaya, but they need a varied diet so they're not eating too much of any one thing. So vitamin C
So,
definitely is an issue.
so all animal protein then. I mean, a lot of recommendations are out there that say, yeah, no animal protein for parrots. But like feeding pinky mice for toucans.
Yeah, and when it comes to so my toucans when they're not breeding, not breeding at all, they're getting some insect protein
Hmm.
um, regularly, a few times a week. When it comes to feeding their chicks, breeding season, then they do get more because that's going to be primarily what they're feeding their chicks. They want high protein, um, foods to feed their chicks. I even give them defrosted peas because for some
Hmm.
reason they go crazy for peas. I give them leafy greens. I don't give them spinach, but I give them other types of leafy greens because presumably they want to jumpstart fermentation in the gut so that high fiber, that higher fiber green stuff helps with
Hmm.
that. But I don't feed that to them unless they're feeding it to their chicks. Otherwise, they
Okay.
get 12 different types of fruits minimum per day, and
Hmm.
then some insects here and there.
Okay. And the same, that same kind of no real need for animal protein unless applies to all parrots. I mean,
Yeah, yes, yes. Especially parrots, I would say. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about, oh, I saw a video one time and this one was eating eggs. Birds don't lay eggs to eat them. Like that is a huge energy expenditure. They do that because there's something going on, or they're eating the eggs of another animal because for some reason they need that right now. But that does not mean that eggs are part of the regular parrot diet, for example. That's just not true. Um, but with pinky mice and toucans, like I would feed those while they were feeding chicks and
Mhm.
maybe occasionally here and there for protein, but it's not going to be a standard part of the diet, in my opinion, now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because that has been, and I know you've worked in the zoo field, and so have I, and I think, that was the party line for a very long time. Was, oh, okay, so you got that pinky in your pocket that you're going to go feed, the toucans or the softbell, and it was like, but it makes sense that it's not a good thing to do. And the egg piece, I think we get into trouble with the egg piece in the parrot world with, oh, I want to cook for my bird, which, right, don't get you started on the
Don't,
cooking
don't.
thing.
No reason to cook anything for your birds.
Yeah, and eggs especially, it's not, there's no need for it. If you want to share something, create a veggie plate or something to have
Yes.
while you're having your egg for breakfast.
Yep.
But I think that happens
like
quite
you say,
often.
like you say, food is not love, or we tend to think food is love, but we just do damage. And the Association of Avian Veterinarians not last year put out a really interesting Facebook post, and it was very very plainly stated. Cooked, warm, mushy foods are just not necessary. Don't feed them to your birds because they cause all kinds of problems. But cooked
Uh-huh.
food spoils fast. Raw whole food does not. things like that. So just, there's so many healthy things. You're not depriving your bird if you're giving them a lot of healthy produce and things like that. So,
Well, and I think too, I mean, that we're kind of deviating a little bit, but the warm, mushy food, when you think about that, foodborne pathogens occur so much easier, more easily with, it's that moist, warm, things grow when it's moist and warm, and why would you want to put that in your bird's bowl?
and raw is like plants have their own defenses, right? So the
Mhm.
reason you don't see like a salad sitting at room temperature over a few hours immediately go bad is because there's natural plant defenses that keep them from, I mean, plants grow outside, right? Like they grow outside and they don't mold. So those types of things are things we have to consider. Raw whole food is the best, obviously the best choice. It doesn't go bad. But when it comes to cooked foods, very problematic, especially like cooked rice. Cooked rice, you can have a bacteria called Bacillus cereus grow within 2 hours. It can start growing within 2 hours, and it's highly pathogenic. It kills people. They call it Chinese food syndrome because of cooked food like rice that sits out and can develop this bacteria that much quicker. So I don't cook any food. I feed it raw. And when it comes to iron storage disease, I don't offer pellets or any processed food. It's just mainly, these whole foods.
Hmm. Okay, and you said that vitamin C speeds the uptake of iron.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Correct.
So we don't want to go there. And I
Right.
mean,
So
what's your
guava
take on?
guava is the highest in vitamin C. Guava is super high in vitamin C. So that is not a fruit that I'm going to be feeding my toucans, for example.
Mhm.
Parrots, yeah, I'm going to give them some. They go mostly after the seeds anyway, so like that's all good. But papaya, it's high in vitamin C. I'm going to give some, but I'm certainly not going to make a diet for toucans that's based in papaya, which is a lot of the information that's out there, and it's not beneficial.
Right. So Cindy's asking about taking her bird off pellets. So this is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Um, we can't. I mean, Cindy, to answer I'm going to answer your question first. How do you know you're feeding your birds what they really need if you take them off pellets? Wait, what they really need? Wouldn't I take them? Yeah. I mean, it's a choice. It's a, and it's, there's so much work that Jason has done, so much work that is out there about the benefits of raw whole food. And so I think, Cindy, my answer to you, and I can, Jason, please chime in as well. But my answer to you would be, it's going to take you a lot of research, and you need to be, you need to be very diligent about sticking to that approach. I mean,
Yeah.
would you
It's
agree,
it's
Jason?
yeah, it's it's not hard, but once you have a system, you're good. So I mean, I feed every morning. I feed soaked and sprouted items that I do once a week and refrigerate. I do fruit and veg. I do um, different types of oils like coconut oil, palm oil, things like that I'll mix in small amounts. I'll do insect protein, and then but they don't have any access to dry food during the day. I pull that at bedtime, so they then get in the evening a good quality seed and nut mix. They get freeze dried fruit and veg. They get more whole food later, but they need to eat the fresh stuff in the morning. And
Hmm.
so, it's not hard to do once you have a system, but there's no guarantee that your bird's getting everything they need from a pellet any more than they're getting it from a diverse raw food diet. So, it's like Robin said, it's choice, but join my group and we talk a lot about it. Lots and lots of options out there when it comes to that.
Sharon's got a question here. What can you substitute for insects? They're not available in, I'm assuming, British Columbia, BC.
You should be able to get mealworms delivered anywhere in Canada.
If
Um,
that's, I'm assuming BC is. Um,
Yeah, I,
so
I
yeah,
mean,
I
I
mean,
have mine. I have mine shipped to me once a month. I go through about 20,000 mealworms every few weeks. So I have mine shipped directly to me, and I know that there's people in Canada that are getting mealworms regularly delivered too.
I think,
So
yeah, I know. You should be able to get them unless it's something specific to the province, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Lane.
maybe even consider getting freeze dried. Just make sure they're freeze dried. Um,
Yeah.
you don't want roasted or dried like they feed wild birds because that annihilates a lot of the nutrition. You definitely want freeze dried edible insects, which are much more available right now.
Do you guys carry the freeze dried at the store?
So we put freeze dried black soldier fly larvae, which are great calcium source, as well as mealworms in our Go Wild foraging mixes. And that's mixed with all kinds of things that they get in the wild, including nuts from Indonesia that we bring in from the Indonesian Parrot Project. South American items like Pautera nuts and Matamba nuts that we know the parrots there eat, those types of things. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. Plus eucalyptus leaf and papaya leaf and um, plantain leaf, all these things that a lot of these birds are going to see in the wild.
So Sharon says they won't ship to Canada. So Sharon, let me well, I will look into this a little bit and see if we can find that. So if you want to reach out on the leather elves, just send me a message, and I will do a little bit of research for you and see if we can help you with that. So um, the oh, Douglas says I believe some larvae are available at Chirp and Dales in Canada. It's a great name. So flukers won't ship across the border because I was going to
But there's
suggest
out
fluker.
there's out there are farms in Canada that are doing this, so you should be able to find some.
All right, so we'll work on that for you, Sharon. Um, okay, so we've had the question: can this affect all parrots? You mentioned the African gray. So
Mhm.
which species are most prone to this?
So there are species and species groups that are prone to iron storage disease. Pretty much all the lories and lorikeets have been known to have iron storage. All toucans, all the rimfastids, minas, starlings, and then I've seen it in other birds, but I can't say that it's like they're prone to it. I've seen it in a
Hmm.
pyonis. I've seen it in an African gray. I've seen it in a Cape parrot. I've seen it in a cockatoo. So a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that they're on a lot of processed food and not a lot of whole food like they've
Hmm.
evolved to eat. There's a lot of other animals though that have this. So lemurs are prone to iron storage. I've actually worked with zoos to develop tea blends specifically for their lemurs. Rhinoceros,
Hmm.
um, which I believe is what Karen Becker actually saw it first in, offering tea first in. They would roll the tea leaves into their browse and then offer it them to drink. Um,
Hmm.
some primates are prone to this, like marmosets and baboons, among others. So there's definitely species, and the idea is that these are animals who are consuming tannins in the wild, and so they've evolved to have these tannins naturally limit the absorption of iron in their body. And then when we bring them into our environments, we're not replicating that tannin rich environment like water, for example. So when you look, and I mean, you've seen it, when you look at wild water sources, they're not clean, right? They're what we would call tea, right? There's lots of plant components in there that leach these compounds into the water, and these animals are drinking these regularly. So when we started offering tea, I remember somebody go, "That's witchcraft," and I'm like, "No, it's just plant. It's just plant based medicine." So the idea is that the teas will produce tannins and other compounds into the water, and then you have these animals drinking it so that they're not succumbing to iron storage disease. And if it's puddles on the curb in front of your house that has lots of leaves in it, you'll notice there's a lot of birds drinking from those puddles, and they're rich in tannins. I worked with a nature museum that had a large reptile collection, and they were using my tea in the aquarium to make the tannin rich. And some of you have probably been to a zoo where you see this water and it's very tinted brown. That's tannin
Mhm.
rich water, and that's what these animals need to live. So it's the tea has definitely been a game changer for a lot of species, but it can benefit all of them.
So they're getting their tannins through the tea. If you're doing that,
Mhm.
if you're using your products, um, how else do birds get tea? Get not tea, get tannins.
I mean, some foods you can get tannins from, but the bulk of it's going to be through, drinking
Yeah.
water. And when it comes to, um, how do we say this? I mean, some foods just naturally have some tannins, which can be beneficial, but some of those also are high in vitamin C. So, yeah, it's a quandary, but that's why I recommend, focusing when you're focusing on the nutrition of your bird. You don't focus just on food. You need to focus on what they're drinking, and a tea regimen is just beneficial. Um, and what I mean, if you look into the research, we know that what these tannins do.
Mhm.
Human research alone, and we know that if you're anemic, you shouldn't be drinking tannin-rich, teas and things like that, because it will carry out the little iron you have in your body that you need. But when it comes to research, I think probably the study that changed my mind the most was in 2003, and it was done at Brookfield Zoo, where I worked for many years. And what the researchers there did was they took, a group of starlings, and they put half of them on a high iron diet and the other half on a high iron diet with tea. And when they looked at
Mhm.
the iron content of the liver, it was significantly different. And I think I have the abstract. Yeah. Basically, they said, iron concentrations increased significantly in the birds that consumed only the iron enriched diet for 6 months, but not in the 20 birds that consumed the iron enriched diet with tea leaf. So even though they were in an iron rich diet, the tea made all the difference, and they didn't succumb to iron storage. So, we know those tannins are beneficial.
Yeah. So Paul asked, he says he uses a lot of apple branches for perches, and the bark ends up in the water and leaches the tannins. So that's
Mhm.
fine for a bird to drink, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
when you consider the rain catches that these birds drink from up in the rainforest, I mean,
yeah.
or the puddles and lakes that they drink on the ground, in Australia, for example. Um, there's a ton of plant components, barks, sticks and twigs, leaves, just all kinds of things that are leaching this stuff into the water.
Mhm.
You and I, have used mahogany pods in enrichment,
Right.
which is a very popular in bird toys now. Those are very rich in tannin. Someone just contacted me, earlier today saying, "Hey, I see my bird actually eating this mahogany pod. Is that okay?" And it's like, well, there's probably a reason for that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so with the other animals, just to kind of circle back to like the rhinoceros, the lemurs, the not, baboons,
yeah,
marmosets, same regimen. I mean, same approach if they need to be treated for this. Okay.
yep, yep.
Um,
And they're that, like I said, they're feeding and, giving them water with tea in it because that's what they're evolved to drink. So that's trying to mimic the, um, their what they've evolved to eat consume every day is really important, and I think we don't spend enough time focusing on their wild life and what how they've evolved. You can't unevolve a bird. um, you can't
yeah.
undo, countless generations of adaptation. So,
Yeah. And so that kind of begs the question. So if you've got a bird that has been misfed, for lack of a better term, um, how do you kind of ease back into, so I guess it's diet conversion, for lack of, you know, a better way to put it. But how do you ease back into something like this? So I know there are people out there, I'm sure, who are asking, well, how do I get my bird to drink tea? You know,
mhm.
how do you do that, Jason?
So I offer tea with fresh food each morning because that's when they're more likely to eat and drink. Right, they're hungrier and they want to get their breakfast in. So I offer tea. I pull water and food at bedtime because you know as well as I do, birds do not get up in the dark for a midnight snack. The lights go out, their eyes shut off. They're staring into space because their brain is off. That's it. So that allows me to have complete control over what they see first thing in the morning, and that's going to be tea, and it's going to be fresh food, fresh whole foods, raw foods. When it comes to getting them to eat or drink something that you want, you talk about this a lot. There's multiple ways to present these things in order to get them eating and drinking what we want them to. Um, Tea, for example, like I had an eclectus that would not drink tea out of his. He put stuff in his bowl. That's his job to make soup out of everything. That is not. I am not allowed to do that. So I got a wide bottom mug that he couldn't tip, and he would drink it out of that no problem. Presumably because he saw me drinking it out of a mug. Who knows? But those are the types of things that you can do. Change the receptacle, change the way you're offering it. Maybe offer it in a saucer or some kind of flat bowl. Those types of things. You can also take what you steep, the stuff you steep, the flowers, the leaves, things like that, and roll them into your fresh fruit or your chop or whatever, and they can consume them that way as well. It's more beneficial to brew and get them to drink it than it is to have them consume the whole product after it's been brewed. But yeah, definitely um, keeping birds is an experiment that never ends. So you just got
Yeah.
to keep trying different ways.
Ray says her YouTube looks forward to his tea every morning.
Mhm.
So and it's part it's that routine again too. I mean, you create that routine, and if you stick to it, they're going to ease into it.
Mhm.
So we you talked about starlings. Can we talk a little bit about how do we know about you've got we were discussing whether you can limit dietary iron for starlings. Um, Talk to me about that, please.
Um, I mean, limiting dietary iron is going to, you need to look at the iron content, the type of iron, which is really difficult. I mean, that's nutrition is a very complicated science. I teach a one semester animal nutrition course for undergrads that are going to vet school, and it's like it's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, but we're just trying to give them an overview so that they hear a more wide perspective when it comes to the nutrition in animals. But when it comes to iron, you got to look at the type of iron. Um, Avoiding things that are enriched with iron. Anything that's heat processed, for example. So a lot of the pellets, bread, pasta, things like that. Like they're just birds do not need bread and pasta. We should not be eating them. We know they're not healthy, so they definitely should not be given to the birds. But those types of things that are enriched can be problematic. Like we talked about earlier with animal meat and things like that, eggs, that can be problematic. But when it comes to birds like starlings, I mean, they're highly omnivorous. They eat a lot of bugs and worms and stuff like that in the wild. So, what's the difference? They're probably consuming soil in a lot of the food. I mean, and European starlings in particular have that very specialized adaptation where they put their beak in to the soil and open it to create gaps and things like that. Um, so they're probably consuming soil. We know they're consuming tea and tannins and things like that. So um, definitely lots of tannins in the environment. So limiting the iron through limiting processed food, limiting stuff that's not raw whole food in the diet, and then watching the vitamin C content to make sure they're not getting too much vitamin C. And it's really easy to Google um, like the USDA website and just look at what's the vitamin C content of papaya versus apple or something like that. Like you can look at that and do your own research and say what are some low vitamin C? And because humans can have this disorder, um, there is research out there that says here are items that you should avoid if you have this, and here are items that you can eat
Mhm.
without having ill effects. So
And I think too, a lot of that goes back to moderation. You don't want to be feed if you're anything that you're feeding, if you're not feeding in moderation, then there's going to be an increase and it's probably not going to affect that bird positively.
right. Yeah, and
So,
diversifying the diet is everything. Diversity, diversity, diversity. That's why I call this biodiversity. The more things that they're consuming, the less likely they are to eat too much of any one thing. You and I have been banging our heads on the against the wall for years now because people are out there saying sunflower seed is unhealthy. Sunflower seed is a health food, but they don't need more than a couple here and there, right?
mhm.
They don't need to go back to 1987 where it was like a big bowl of sunflower seeds all the time. We don't need that anymore. We know that sunflower seed's healthy, but too much of any one thing is unhealthy.
Mhm.
So by diversifying, and even on the bags of my foraging mixes, I have a I don't know, there we go. I literally have here's portion sizes for your birds because feeding too much. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen budgies sitting on 2 cups of food, and it's like that's going to take them months to eat. We feed too much because food is love, and and then we're surprised when they have deficiencies. So diversify, and portion control.
Well, and I think with portion control, people get misled because the bowl that comes with the cage, even
Yes.
if it's, yeah, I mean, there really aren't any birds that are, being held in human care that need the full bowl of food.
Yes.
I mean, I don't, you buy the big macaw cage and you've got the bowl that's, this big, and it doesn't have to be filled to the brim
No.
twice a day. I mean, that's the real kicker. And
And
even, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Even with a parakeet, you get the bowl that's this deep. Parakeet's not going to eat that much food, or probably shouldn't be. Then, because
Right.
then we end up with the chunky birds.
Yes.
Yeah, Karen says they take the food out at Avian Sweets. They've seen a lot of birds convert to fresh breakfast
Yep.
easily in a week's time.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, when
Um,
you think about a bird's life in the wild, they're not like a macaw's not landing on a perch, grabbing a nut, and then doing that 22 more times in an hour. Like that's just not happening. There's a lot of energy involved in that. But it is going to take something, right? And just look for footage online of these birds eating in the wild, and you'll see how much time they spent on one thing. So, like,
mhm.
if they're eating some kind of nut, like the palm cockatoos like beach almonds, and they're this big green fleshy thing, and they're chewing it because the nut is inside it. It's really small. Like they have to work at it because they're spending all day busy, right? They're busy. We're not we take that away from them in our homes, right? So we want to give them lots of foraging opportunities, but they need to work at these things, which is why I say like a skewer is your best friend because you can put anything on there and let them work at it. Give them a whole apple and just let them work at it. It's those types of things that they should be doing during the day, and worrying less about micromanaging to make sure, did they get their vitamin A today? Like all birds do not need all their nutrients every day. That's just not how it works.
Well, because
So,
it doesn't work that way, when you think, and you and I have said this for a long time, you got to think back to the wild. What are they doing? What would they be doing in the wild? What would they be eating in the wild? And there's not, they don't fly from tree to tree to tree because, it's not like the vitamin A groceries are here, the vitamin, whatever groceries are here.
yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And it's about
Mhm.
availability. It's about, you need to look at their energy, their activity budgets. Okay. So
Right.
if we, this is something that we've been talking about forever, that the amount of energy that's expended, the amount of activity that a bird participates in a day, has to balance out with the intake of food. You know, you've got that perch potato who's not doing anything. I don't care, even if you're feeding fresh, feeding him a giant bowl of fresh is still not going to make a difference. Well, it'll make a
Right,
difference, but it's
right,
not going to, suddenly make everything better.
right. And we've been largely misled, especially through pet food manufacturers like dogs and cats, where it's like they can get 100% of their nutrient by feeding this one food every day. No, 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 no. That's not possible. Um, they need a diversity. They need to be getting the different nutrients from different sources. They need to be thinking and using their tongue and their beak and their toes and everything to manipulate all these different types of food. They need that physiological stimulation for the different types of foods, but more the mental stimulation, right? The engagement with different types of food items, which makes them problem solve. And that's what they spend 3/4 of their days doing. So this is one reason why iron storage disease is more common, because we don't give them the diversity. They get a lot of one thing as the bulk of the diet, and then we wonder why they can't process, um, the food that they're taking
And,
properly.
I kind of think about, we've talked about foraging 1,000 times, and it's
Every time
so
we talk.
important. But when you think about, okay, so we're feeding this, we're hoping that their bodies are processing what we're giving them, that it's appropriate. But think about, even if you were to eat a healthy, I mean, okay, so I'm anthropomorphizing here, which we've also talked about, but just for a way to think about it as a frame of reference, you eat a healthy meal, and then if you just sit, it processes slower than if you're active.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's, how you have that meal and then you feel like, oh, I don't want to do anything. But if you do
yeah.
something, you're
Go
ready
for
for
a
that
walk.
snack. You're ready for the
Yep,
ice cream
yep,
sundae. But yeah, it's just a matter of, Adrian says balance over time, and I think it's balance in what we're feeding. It's diversity. It's how to keep them active and moving. It's so important because, I've said this 1,000 times too. I am a huge proponent of aviculture and pet ownership and bird ownership, but we do take away some of the things that they experience in the wild if they were wild, if they were born in the wild. Um, it's a different environment, it's a different world, and we need to make sure we're filling in the blanks that get taken away in a different environment.
yep.
So
And we can replicate those things and give the birds those opportunities. And I mean, I've seen the stress data. Like the birds that have the enrichment and are living really great lives are doing just fine. They're not stressed. Probably more stress in the wild than they would in our homes. But we can totally give them replace those types of activities, um, with foraging opportunities and things like that. Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be the 17-step puzzle feeder. That's not necessary. It's foraging by definition is making a search. That's it. Making a search. And so, just moving things around the cage or around the play stand, that kind of interaction and that kind of movement replicates what they'd be doing. When you think about the amount of energy a bird expends flying, if your bird's not
Hmm.
flighted, you need to find a way to fill in that void. So we've talked about we've been talking about soft bills, and we did promise special guests, did we not?
I'll be back.
So just while Jason's we cut away. I will tell you guys, there's a lot of really cool stuff that Jason's got in the store. Some different foraging opportunities, some things like mahogany pods, sala balls. What else? Let's see. I'm trying to think. There was just so much, and it's really, um, it's if you're in Florida, it's worth a trip. I can't guarantee that these kind of guests will always be there, but This is what makes it worthwhile.
So I'm not going to get a word in edgewise with these guys. I'm just warning you. But these are groove-billed toucanets. They're one of the smaller species of toucans. And these guys just were pulled today. They're a few weeks old. And this is
They're
one
dinosaurs.
flush. Anyone that doubts the dinosaur connection needs to see naked toucans. You'll notice that they're pink. They don't develop. No toucans develop down feathers, so they just develop those pointy feather shafts that come through, but they're never ever fuzzy. So,
So how long before they're in full feather?
in 4 weeks they'll be weaned, so they grow pretty quick. I'm going to see if I can see if we can see this, but if you look, they see how their toes aren't touching the ground. There you go. So this one here, so you can see it's got a non-skid pad on its haunches here. It's actually got little spikes on it, and that's to keep them from sliding around. But they sleep and sit with their feet up in the air like this. And that's a toucan thing.
Huh. And do those ever go away, or is that just a...
Yeah, they completely disappear when they wean.
Wow. That's
Now,
cool.
this is another clutch of the same type birds, and they're only about a week older. And you can see they look a lot different. So their eyes just opened. You can see the green feathering coming in. But like all toucan species, they're prone to iron storage disease. So we start them off young. They're all weaned, hand reared with a T in their formula, and they are weaned to a diverse whole food diet. They don't get any pellets. They get some. They're weaned to minimum of 12 different types of fruits per day, and then tea and some insects.
Nice. So it's not so it's the same. It pretty much stays consistent no matter what age they are. Yeah.
Yes.
Shelley says they are ugly and cute all at the same time.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
And I don't know if you heard me say this. TJ said they can come and live at the Conservancy.
Yeah.
In case you'd like to send them somewhere.
He's got to come visit first.
All right, TJ, take that challenge. If you come visit, he said they could come to the Conservancy. I'm working for you here, buddy. So
there's only a few people in the country that have this species right now, and their first breeding was last year, and I missed it by a few weeks, but that's okay. And they just are a really neat little bird, super friendly when they're hand reared, and I'm hoping that I can make at least one unrelated pair from these babies, so that we can get somebody else involved in genetically diversifying that population.
Nice. What about PJ's offering trades here? Trade for Bruce's green pigeon.
Yeah, message me.
So one of the as far as enrichment for softbills, what kind of things do you suggest people, if somebody has, they don't have a whole aviary of softbills, what would you suggest that they offer?
Offer for parrots, for example?
For softbills, for enrichment.
Oh, so enrichment-wise, I tend to offer them things that can easily be washed, because, like I said, they're going to be on a largely fruit diet. So I will put in larger chunks of fruit into those acrylic balls that are on the skewer. I'll put chunks of fruit on the skewer, and let them tear pieces off and things like that. But that's something you do outside and not inside. It'll be all over the walls. But you can definitely do something like that. And yeah, so PVC elbows, and you put blueberries in there and let them forage.
Yeah.
I have monkey pods
I
that
love those.
yeah, the monkey pods. Is there one around? But I have hang on, I'm gonna get a monkey pod delivered to me. But the
I
monkey
saw these when I
pods,
was there. Those are so cool.
yeah,
They
anything. I mean, and they're just a nut husk, but they're super dense, really dense. They're similar to what like Brazil nuts grow in and come out of, but any kind of food that's not wet. So like whole blueberries, for example, would be great for in here. Things like that would be another option for this. I like for parrots and things like that. I like to stuff it with crinkle paper and do all kinds of stuff, and they'll spend hours using this. And if they want to destroy it, they can try. But those are the types of things that um, you can do for toucans. I know I've seen things that you've done in the past with toucans and taracos, I believe, with the paper shopping bags and
Yep.
putting things in there and letting them tear through or jump in and try to get out. Stainless steel buckets are another really great one because those are easy to clean, and you can throw stuff on top of the fruit and that type of thing. And then dried dried forage. So I really like my flour forage mix. I love throwing that on top of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
And so Lori's asking, where do they find the monkey pods?
Biobirdblends.com. Just click on the online shop. They should be there. And we have them on skewers. We have them with mounting hardware, that stainless mounting hardware, so you could mount them to the side of the cage or the top of the cage. There's options.
All right. So, and by the way, Cindy is buttering you up by saying that her girls love the monkey pods, but then she also said, "I've got some beautiful silky chickens." So she's trying to,
I want
barter with you.
I want I want three silky chickens to just follow me around while I'm taking care of my gardens and stuff. So I wanted
So,
silky chickens forever
maybe you
someday.
can work out a deal with Cindy then.
Yeah.
All right. So, any final words on iron storage or on any final words that you want to let people know?
Um, you know, if we're diversifying the diet and we're not, we can't be stubborn and closed minded when it comes to feeding our birds. I think a lot of people are like, no, what I'm doing is right and I'm not going to change, that type of thing. I see it a lot with people that offer a lot of animal meat and eggs to their birds regularly. There's no reason for it. And if a veterinarian or somebody told you to do that, you probably need to get a second opinion. But I would definitely, focus on raw whole food, things we know are healthy, fruits, vegetables, sprouts, microgreens, things like that. We know all of that's good. We know all of that is safe. We know all of that is extremely nutritious,
Mhm.
and they can get lots and lots of diversity. So, seeds and nuts are not the devil. They have a huge wealth of nutrition. We just have to watch portion sizes. So, just open your mind a bit. Really think about like, what could I do different? Because any different thing you introduce is going to excite your bird, even if they're suspicious at the beginning. But the more change, the more different things they see every day, the better their life is. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thank you so much again for being on, and it's always fun, and I always learn something. Um, just sorry, I was just reading a comment. Paul likes your take on Appleseed. He says he's been feeding and not worrying for 50 years. So Paul, you know now that people are going to call somebody, I don't know, up there in New York and say that you're just feeding your birds apple seeds. That's what's going to come out of that comment, just so you know. Uh,
I mean,
so
I had some crazy person call my employer one time because I had said birds eat avocados in the wild, and they called my employer to say I was going to kill their birds because I'm going to sneak avocado and feed them. And I'm like, no, I literally said, do not feed your birds avocado. But they do
Yeah.
eat them in the wild because they ripen on the tree and they're not toxic that way. But the ones in your grocery store are not the same. So no, I didn't say that. So yeah, people
It's
can
that
get a little bit
selective
crazy.
hearing. It's selective
Yes.
hearing and it's confirmation bias. That's what
Yep.
happens. Well, I want this to be the way, I want this to be the case. So that's the way I'm going to go, no matter
Yes.
what. Um,
Absolutely.
so, all right. Oh, one last question. Alex wants to know, can sprouts be fed to minor birds?
I don't feed any green stuff to mina birds specifically because of the iron. So I would probably avoid that. Um, there might be some exceptions, but do your research on the iron content of individual components and see what you come up with.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jason. And if you are in Florida, you should stop by and see him. The store is great. The information's great. The products are great. So take some time if you're in Florida. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump from Orlando.
Yeah, we're
And
very
it's a
close to Orlando.
yeah, great restaurants on that City
Yeah.
Walk Lane right there too. So it's
Yep.
worth it.
Yep.
And
It's a beautiful area.
go take Jason and his crew out for dinner. That's all I'm just saying. Um,
And we
so
do have great products, including a full line of the Leather Elves toys.
that
So
is true.
come and see what we have.
Yep. I was
Everything's
like, oh,
natural. Everything's totally natural.
I was like, I suppose you could have them at your store. So yes, there are. So Cindy's on her way with the Silkies. She's going to be visiting your store soon.
Okay. All
So
right.
just be prepared.
Sounds good.
All right, guys.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jason. Remember the
Thank
Rockstar
you.
Tour is we're going across the country. Carrie Ellen and I in July, end of July to August, and those are our dates. If you're near any of those places, order a T-shirt. Go on the day we're going to be there, and we have reinforcement for that behavior, so there'll be some surprises if you've got your t-shirt on and you come visit us. Support our supporters. These companies have taken the time, made the effort to support us, so please support them. They are supporting rescue, they're supporting the avian industry. So if you need any products from those guys, I highly suggest it. So buy your t-shirt before the end of the month. Stop by and see us on the tour, and we will see you soon. Everybody have a great week. Thanks. Bye-bye.